right, well, welcome back to Open Bible, Open Life. I'm Pastor Kyle, and today I'm joined by two of my favorite staff members, Spencer Martin and Vinny. Vinny, how do you say your last name?
Palucci.
Palucci, a good Italian last name.
It is.
Yeah, all right, man. Where'd you grow up?
So I originally grew up in the Dallas, Texas area,
Okay.
and then did my from birth to 8th grade basically in Dallas, and then we did 8th grade in high school in California, and then I
Yes.
came over to Wake Forest in 2014.
So you were in California before you came to Wake Forest?
Correct.
What's
Yes.
it like to move to America?
Yes. So it was definitely, I think the biggest culture shock was from Dallas to California.
That is a big culture shock.
Yeah.
Tell me the difference. Were you in church in both those areas?
I grew up in a nominal Catholic background, kind of similar to how you talk about your background.
Yes.
Grew up going to church, going to Catholic Mass. We went kind of progressively less as the years progressed. And then it was really kind of when it came to Wake Forest that the Lord really gripped hold of my heart.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So when you go back to Dallas in your mind for a second, they talk about the Bible Belt. They talk about Dallas being the buckle of the Bible Belt. Did you feel that even when you were growing up there?
Yes, I think so. Especially because the school I went to was an Episcopalian school, so
Yes.
it was a good academic school, and there was an Episcopalian background. So many people that went to the school were identifying as Christian in some form or other, whether that be Catholic or Episcopalian or Baptist or non-denominational. And so a lot of peers of mine had some kind of Christian background.
Great.
For sure.
Well, and Spencer, you're no, what am I trying to say? You're no stranger. That's what I'm trying to say. You're no stranger to the podcast. Back for your maybe 5th or 6th time. Sometimes we bring you by yourself. Sometimes we bring your wife.
I just come by from time to time whenever you invite me.
Hey, man.
Here.
Well, I'm glad you're here. So I brought you guys on. In fact, this is exciting. We were talking about this, Spencer and I were the other day. We're going to talk about missions today. Basically, we've been in Jonah. Jonah is, you could argue, one of the most missional books in the Old Testament. He's, called to go on mission. He's reluctant. He's in chapter 3. He's recalled to go on mission. We'll see what happens in chapter 4. He goes to the Ninevites. And so I just thought, man, what if we had a conversation today about mission, particularly, because mission can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, particularly global missions. I'm excited because with you two now, as well as two of our residents.
That's right.
We now have, I just want our church to know this, most people who listen to this podcast are going to be in our church. We have 4 people on staff who a large part of their job is to be thinking about missions, and honestly, primarily global missions. Spencer, can we justify this?
I think we definitely can. So just a little bit of background for our church's life.
And remind us of your
in
role.
global missions. So my official title is Missions and College Pastor. So local, national, global missions, as well as college, as well as some general pastoral responsibilities. But basically, in 2021, right after COVID, we did some missions things before COVID. But in 2021, everything was still sort of on pause when it came to the missions world with COVID. And I used to describe COVID or our missions wing as a sleeping baby that was about to
Yes,
wake up.
I remember you saying that.
And so that was 2021. And so Vinny, part of his story is Vinny was in the corporate America world. He was working for Disney. So Vinny graduated from Wake Forest. You can tell your own story if you want, but graduated from Wake Forest, got your master's in accounting from Wake Forest, and then worked in corporate America for a few years. He was working at Disney. He had a huge heart for mission, which is why he ended up taking this role. Transitioned into our residency a little over 2 years ago as our first ever global missions resident. And so the last 2 years, part of what Vinny's been doing, and he can tell you more about this, is he has been building much of our global missions efforts here.
Dude, it's unbelievable. Vinny, we need to talk about you. You know how much I love you, man. We're going to talk about you for a little bit. So you go to Wake, and then you get a undergrad and a master's there.
Correct.
And then you go and work for the devil. I mean, Disney. I'm just kidding. I know, but you go to Disney. No, I'm kidding. But you work in the corporate world. And seriously, I could see, not a Christian, maybe a Christian, but I could see a modern person saying, Vinny, what in the world are you doing? Why did you leave? Seriously, I want to hear your heart on this. Yeah. Why would you, because here's the world's perspective. Why did you leave a good job with a good company, with good benefits? Why did you do that? Go raise your support, move across the country to do a 2-year residency about global missions. So tell us how you found it to be so valuable you were willing to change jobs, raise money, and move across country?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think in order to kind of get there, we kind of have to back up a little bit.
Please.
Back to 2019. So spring of 2019 was my last semester of college. That was my like my second semester of my grad year. And I went on a mission trip with Two Cities Church, one of the ones that Spencer referred to, to India. And it was basically the India trip that you did the year before with Josh Calhoun and so forth. There's 5 of us that went. And on that trip, we were mostly in the city of Mumbai, but we went outside of the city to some villages and kind of did some outreach out there with the team out there. And I remember vividly having a 45-minute conversation with like a teenager, maybe like 17 or 18, and her younger brother who's maybe like 13 or 14 in their home. And we shared the gospel with them. And at the end of that, we asked her, like, have you ever heard of this word? Have you ever heard of Jesus? And she said, no.
Wow.
That was her first time. And that really just hit me like a ton of bricks because I had heard of, UPGs, the 1040 window. I knew these realities, but it was forever changed because it was now a person that I had interacted with. And I had a 30, 45-minute conversation with. And that really just like kind of was like, just like thing that was on my mind all the time. So I'm fast forward. My first job out of college was for a company called Ernst & Young, which is a big accounting firm.
Yes.
And so I was based in their San Francisco office. And I'd be sitting at my desk at EY, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, Vinny, there are people that are going to die today that have never heard the good news. Like, what are you doing about that? And that was something that was just like, it was almost paralyzing at times. It almost was like a distraction to my work. Maybe in some ways even was, because it was something that was just on my mind. And so the pandemic hits, and then I become remote, and so then I switch jobs and I start working for Disney, and it was just this nagging reality that like there are people, millions of people, billions of people across the world that have little to no access to the gospel, and I just couldn't like sit and like let that be reality, not do something about that, and so that's kind of what was a huge catalyst for me. I was still kept in touch with Spencer even when I was on the West Coast, and to want to come and do the residency and be a part of that and help just push back darkness across the nations. And
so, Spencer, we'll go back to you in a second, but tell us, Vinny, what are some of the things, residency aside, all the things you learned there and the development times and seminary and all that, what did you do? I know you're doing a little more than this now, but just over the last 2 years, talk to us about some of the things you've done to help catapult our church into the next level of missions.
Yeah, I mean, so when I kind of onboarded, we're kind of waking that sleeping baby, as Spencer alluded to. The biggest part of that was kind of working around short-term trips. How do we get people on the field? Because the youth have been doing some trips, the college have been doing some trips, but wasn't really many opportunities for members to be a part of those and to have their own trips. And so 2023 was kind of like the year of the short-term trip. So we had, I can't remember, maybe a dozen trips or so that had about 90 members that went on to a variety of locations. And it was really cool just to see how the Lord raised up those people and leaders to go lead those trips, many lay elders and people in leadership in our church, and to help do that. And so that was a great kind of just blessing to see the Lord work through that in 2023. And then 2024 has kind of continue to build upon that from a short-term trip perspective, but even thinking increasingly more like a long-term. How do we take this short-term momentum that we have and convert to people that want to be sent to the nations long-term?
I love it. We're going to come back to you, but Spencer, I want to hear why are short-term mission trips so effective?
Well, I think that Vinny gave us a very clear picture when he was describing how he was called to this role here. When he was talking about it, he said that I knew about UPGs. I knew that people were lost.
What is a
globally.
UPG? Just remind us.
So UPG stands for Unreached People Groups.
Right.
Those, and how do you like to define that? Don't you have a definition for UPG? No Bibles, no churches?
No Bible, no believers, no building.
Yes.
Basically, it's been the 3 Bs I've heard. And then there's the UPGs.
Yes.
Unreached, unengaged. Yes. And someone told me there's the people there's like another level, but we'll go beyond that. Anyway, so sorry, go ahead.
And so to the question of why do we send people on short-term trips? Vinny gave us a perfect picture. He said that I knew about this group of people, but until I met someone myself who had never heard of the name of Jesus, it just hit me differently.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to global lostness, when it comes to the millions and billions of people around the world who have never heard of Jesus, for many of us here in the United States, in just the general church here in Winston-Salem, it's easy for those who are lost on the other side of the world to be out of sight, out of mind. And so one of the main reasons we want to send people is we want them to see what's out there. We want them to see more than just hear our Americanized version of church. And so there are lots of different reasons why we send short-term teams. One of the reasons is we want to multiply the efforts of our long-term partners.
Yes.
And so, for example, one of our missionaries in Mexico City, Luke Tatum, he does a lot of evangelism on the college campus. And so in just a few weeks, we're going to send a team to Mexico City to provide him with a lot of manpower to do evangelism with him on campus, give him the contacts afterwards, and he's going to follow up. So one reason is to multiply the efforts of our long-term workers. Another reason is we want to just encourage our long-term workers.
Yes.
And so if that means we go over there and babysit, we are so happy to do so. If that means go and clean their house or paint a wall for them, whatever we can do to encourage them, we want to do it. And so the second reason is to encourage our workers. And the third reason that we like to say is we want to ignite in our people a passion for long-term work. And so, yes, we're very excited about short-term work, but we very much want to see more and more people in our church go from a one-week short-term mission trip to long-term works, which I'm actually, Vinny, would you like to share with us, what is your vision for bridging the gap between
That
a
was my next question.
short-term mission trip and long-term work? How do we go from, I had a great time on this one-week mission trip, to I'm considering moving for 2 years or 3 years or long-term?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, there's so much momentum going on for the short-term trips, but how do we capture that momentum and kind of apply it to long-term efforts? So there's a alliteration, 3 words that I stole from somebody else, but it's discover, develop, deploy.
Yes.
Short-term trips, a lot of reasons for them and purposes that Spencer laid out, but one thing they do is they help us in the discover category, basically kind of defining that as awakening people's hearts to the reality of global lostness, to build awareness, and just build a heart for the Great Commission, and that would be something that they kind of step into in their own lives. And so short-term trips are the best thing to kind of awaken people's hearts when they go out there and they see the realities that are out there. And so they come home, they have this great experience, but then what do you do with them now? That's where the next word comes in, develop. How do we build somebody up as a cross-cultural evangelist and discipler? How do we give them the skills and the tools to be effective in ministry and to go to a new place and to learn a language or to understand how to interact with people from different cultures who have totally different worldviews and totally different beliefs? So how do we give them the tools and just build them up in that way? And then deploy being is how do we basically get them there? Like that can be a lot of things from which organization to go to or where to go to or how to what kind of platform one has, how to legitimize their presence in places sometimes where you can't be there as like a quote unquote missionary, so you have to have a job or you have to be a student or you have to have some kind of skill where the government deems you valuable or worthy enough to be in their borders. And so that's kind of the high level float over of just like kind of helping to kind of create a ladder with rungs that people can kind of go across from like a short-term trip to all the way to like being sent long-term.
Great. Well, we talked a little bit about short-term trips. When we think about our long-term missionary partners, some of whom I know we can't name because of places they're in, or we can't name the place they're in, or we can't name either. That's just fine. But when we think, the language I've used, which I also took from somebody else, was that a good church is a shepherding, supporting, sending church. Shepherding means I encourage and love and care for you, and I know that marriage is going to be hard when you're on the mission field. Supporting is, usually financially we're talking about. Sending is we are going to get you off the ground and get you over there. Talk to us, Vinny, and then also Spencer, about what does it look like? You've mentioned some of this already, but like someone's going to be a missionary with us. They're going to say, because part of what the IMB does, the International Mission Board, a sending agency that we're all familiar with, they're all about, great, we'll help them with their health care, great, we'll do all that, but we'll get them situated there, but we want them to have a local church. What does it look like to be a good local church in regards to supporting missionaries long term? Yeah,
no, that's a great question. Inevitably moving across an ocean to a place that's very different is very hard, and it's very hard for many reasons. Like just for Luke, even going to Mexico City, which is just to the south of here, not different, but not like as different as maybe like Central Asia. There's just so many things you have to learn culturally, the language, just navigating different life, even just like how to get from point A to point B, because the driving is totally different, or the public transportation is totally different. And so it's exhausting for the missionary that's moving there. And so how do we support them well is just by caring for them, to show them that we love them and getting on Zoom calls with them, texting them, reaching out to them, checking in on them, and sending short-term teams. I think one thing too that Spencer alluded to that sometimes goes unemphasized is that just being able to send a short-term team to someone and for them to get to speak English with a native English speaker is just like such a recharge to the batteries. I don't even think about it. Just to be able to talk about sports, like what's going on at the NFL or in college football or, whatever other sports they're interested in. It's like, because often people that they're interacting with are not native English speakers, so they don't know about American sports. And so being able to just like have that familiar face or be able to bring them, like any kind of candy or cereal or stuff that they can't get where they live. It's just like, I remember there was a missionary family I went to go visit in Central Asia a few years back, and one of the things they asked for was pecans, and we brought this bag of pecans, and I don't even personally like pecans that much, and I've never seen someone so excited in his life to ever see a bag of pecans, and it was just something as simple as that, to be able to love him and love his family well, and to encourage them, and so little things like that can go a long way.
Spencer and Vinny, you can chime in on this one too, but how do we find missionary partners? Because I know we have some people in our church. We just mentioned Luke, and that's great. And we've had some others that they're here, and then we send them. But then often, you guys are coming to us and saying, hey, we got this great opportunity in Kenya or wherever. And so how do these come to us? How do you guys vet this is something worth investing in or not? What would you say?
That's a great question. So we primarily partner with the International Mission Board, which is the largest sending organization in the world. Correct me if I'm wrong, Vinny, but I believe they have over 3,000 workers overseas right now.
That's correct,
right?
yeah.
And so the IMB, they do a lot of things very well. They do a great job of training the missionaries, sending the missionaries, taking care of the missionaries while they're there, helping them to reassimilate once they get back. And so primarily we do partner with the International Mission Board, but there are a lot of other organizations that are gospel-centered, that are doing great work, meeting felt needs, meeting forever needs in the name of Jesus, all these things. And so there's, we really just take it case by case. Every organization has a different goal. And so not every single organization, their primary goal is to just share the gospel with people. There are some organizations that are great organizations that we're happy to partner with that their primary goal may be to meet a felt need in Jesus' name. And so we're actually right now talking through what is it going to look like for our church moving forward to continue to vet and to figure out who do we choose to partner with, because something that I've learned being in this role, and this, is that every individual who's ever been on a mission trip has that one organization that they are very excited about us partnering with. And we love all gospel-centered organizations. And so it can be challenging at times to figure out who exactly are we going to partner with, what is strategic, what is maybe less strategic. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
I think to that point, it's like, we have to be strategic, just because if we're not and we say yes to everyone, then we're basically saying no to everyone else. Like, we're no to everyone because we can't help everyone meaningfully, right?
Yes.
There has to be some level of like, hey, here are the handful of people that we are going to strategically invest in and to work with for the sake of helping them go forward, because we can't do that with everyone. We can't do that meaningfully with everyone. And so it's like, to Spencer's point too, people that are thinking about forever needs. Like, yes, felt needs are important. We should care about them. But ultimately, we cannot make people's life more comfortable on their way to hell. And so we need people to come to know Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. And so we want to be a part of organizations that that is the forefront of their mission. That's
right. And that's one of the reasons why we love to partner with the IMB and other like-minded organizations, is because we really prioritize theological alignment.
Yes.
It's not, we don't have to agree on every single issue with every organization that we partner with, but we would prefer to agree as much as possible on as many things as possible, which is why the International Mission Board, which is part of the Southern Baptist Convention, is the main partner that we have.
Yeah. When we think about going overseas, we've mentioned short-term, mid-term, long-term. That's one strategy. You've got your short-term, hey, week or two. Mid-term, I think we're talking year to 3 years. Long-term, okay. But then there's other ways to go overseas. And here's what I mean, and I want you guys to speak in this. I want you to talk a little bit about medical missions. Anything that you would learn about that, as we live in a medical city. Secondly, business as mission. So anything that I know we have a former elder or current elder in our church who did this. And then UPG ministry. Because in my mind, those are three different ways. If you've been reading John Piper books, you tend to think UPG ministries.
Yes.
But there are some other opportunities that could be reached out both in short, midterm, and long-term opportunities. Can you guys, and if there's a category I'm missing, please let me know.
No, that's great. I'll talk a little bit about medical missions. So last year, we sent a medical mission trip team for the first time to Guatemala, correct? And it was a team of maybe 12 or 13, and they went and they set up a clinic in partnership with NC Baptist. So there are some NC Baptist missionaries in Guatemala who do medical missions basically year round. And so we were partnering with them. Our team went to a few different cities, and they saw, I believe, was it over 1,000 patients or 800 patients?
Around
they
1,000,
saw
yeah.
a ton of patients. And basically what our team did is we had some people on the team who took people's vital signs and then do like a pre-visit questionnaire. And then they would see a provider. We sent, I believe, 2 PAs and 1 medical doctor, or maybe 2 medical doctors, 1 PA. And they saw the patients, asked what was going on, took a history, physical exam, and then they prescribed medicines that we had sent down there, and we sent them on their way. And if they needed some kind of follow-up, we would arrange that as well. And then part of that visit, it wasn't just meeting felt needs. Part of that visit is that every person that they saw in the clinic would end up being engaged with the gospel. So there would be someone who was there to try to tell that person about Jesus and try to connect them to a local church in Guatemala. And so we are trying to figure out how can we strategically mobilize everyone in our church, but specifically our medical personnel here at Two Cities. We're going to have another medical trip coming up in early 2025. So if you're listening to this, be on the lookout.
There you go.
Medical missions, it's complicated. That's something else that we've learned. It is probably 5 times as complicated as a standard mission trip, or at least the first one was. It was very challenging.
Yeah.
So that's medical missions. Vinny, tell us about business as mission, and then I've got some thoughts on UPGs.
Yeah, absolutely. So business as mission, it's a growing kind of, not say trend, but it's a growing thing that more missionaries are utilizing to give themselves access to places that are traditionally considered closed countries. Because most closed countries, when you think about the Middle East or North Africa or Central Asia, South Asia, economically, a lot of those countries are not super developed. And so governments are keen and interested to have people come in, Westerners especially, that maybe have stronger business acumen to set up businesses and to be providing jobs for their locals, or to be paying tax revenue, right, on the success of the business. And so business is a platform that's increasingly growing in that part of the world, and through that business too, you can have access to so many people. So for example, there's one guy I know in Central Asia. He's working on creating like car washes, but doing it by hand. And so naturally, he's hiring, a dozen to 15 to 20 locals for the car wash business. So through his business, he now has access to several people, and that could be across several different car washes, right? Same thing true as gyms. Like people that do CrossFit gym is one that's growing in some places too, where the employees that work at the CrossFit gym, or just people that are regulars at the gym, you get to meet as the owner, and you can rub shoulders with and so forth. So it's through the business platform that you have legitimacy in the government's eyes, but also that you're able to build meaningful relationships with the people that you are trying to reach.
It's great.
As far as UPG's unreached people groups go, we are connected to a handful of different missionaries who do a lot of this ministry. Some of our members actually in the Asian Pacific Rim, part of their regular ministry is trying to reach UPGs. What they do is they live in a city and they get on a motorbike and they drive, I believe, an hour or 2 outside of the city up to a mountain. And they are engaging people who have never heard of Jesus on top of this mountain. These are members of Two Cities Church who live overseas.
I know who you're talking
doing
about.
An incredible work. Something that I would just love. I would love if every member of our church, this is probably not possible, I would love that if each of them had the opportunity to get to know or hear the story of each of our missionaries, because we have some members that are doing incredible work. And so they ride to a mountain, but we also have some members or some missionary partners in South Asia. You've met these partners who they go out into the villages. They drive hours outside of civilization. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was on one of those things. So basically, it's like one of those, I can, you guys know me, I can be a little high maintenance about some things. And they tell me, okay, pack your lunch. We're not eating out today. Pack your lunch where it's going to be a 3-hour drive. And so we drive for 3 hours, and about an hour and a half in, they said, this will be the last Western toilet. And it was something that looked like a McDonald's, but it wasn't.
It's McDonald's. I've been to that McDonald's, actually.
Yeah, okay, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So we go in there, we use the restroom, we drive another hour and a half, we hike up into this area, and they basically said, hey, you're going to be the only white people that these people have ever seen. We end up through a series of events, my friend who was with me on the trip ends up leading this family to Christ that they end up baptizing, that we find out starts a church in the home. Anyway, so incredible, but it's so funny. So we then drive 3 hours back. And me and the guy that I was on this trip with, we were staying in the same hotel room, sleeping in different beds. We're in the same hotel room. I remember we're laying down at night, and he goes, Kyle, he said, what if I would have got appendicitis today? It's like, man, you just gotta trust the Lord. Yeah, we were deep out there. I mean, it was not a. I will say that trip that I was on, that you've been on, Vinny, that is not a JV trip. That is a varsity trip. But you're exactly right. You begin to taste mission, and you begin to realize, like I said, this was the couple that we went with that you were referring to. This couple's in their 50s. They look like the vast majority of people in our church, and they do that 2 or 3 times a week because they genuinely have a heart for these unreached people groups, and you can just see it, and they're not playing around.
Yes.
It's very serious. I think part of what happens when you go on a world mission trip and visit is you see God at work all over. And I've said this before, then you get over there and you do all these things. You're like, why don't I just do these at home? And I know it's a different context, but if I just did some of these things at home, my life would be so different and better and more influential for Christ at home. With our time left, guys, where do we get started? So let's talk about just getting started. And someone says, man, this was an interesting conversation. I want to learn more about world missions. What are there books that you'd recommend? Is there sermons you'd recommend? Is there podcasts you'd recommend? Like, if someone just said, I need to start learning more about this. I'm learning words like UPG and business as mission. Where do I just learn about this?
Yeah, so there's plenty of books out there. There's a podcast. Missions Talk is a podcast that's great. Radical is a book by David Platt that he wrote maybe, I don't know, almost 2 decades ago, maybe now. It's like he's created this whole like ministry brand around it. That's awesome. That's a great place to start. Something that we are doing as a church. Am I allowed to like talk about this?
Sure,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So one that we've talked about is just kind of building like knowledge and awareness of UPGs, the 1040 window, like these kind of mission.
Remind us
terms.
because we haven't mentioned. What is the 1040 window?
Yeah, great. So the 1040 window is from 40 degrees north latitude, from 10 degrees north latitude, from West Africa to East Asia is the 1040 window. And so it's where the greatest concentration of lostness is. It's Middle East, North Africa, Central Asia, South Asia, and East Asia. 97% of UPGs live in that 1040 window.
Whoa.
And so 3.2 billion people, of which most of them have little to no access to the gospel. And so things like that, like people have heard of like a place like Turkey from, I don't know, the movies, or just like, they have other interactions with pop culture with it. But Turkey is incredibly unreached. By people's estimates, maybe 0.02% of the population is Christian of 80 million people. That's 2 Christians for every 10,000 people, which is wild. So something that we want to hope to do is like just help educate our church and our city on those realities. And so we're going to roll out a missions class. We're going to have a small pilot this fall, but then roll it out maybe to the general church at some point early next year. And that be a thing that people can come to and learn like, hey, here's what a UPG is. Here's what the 1040 window is. Here's, how urbanization and globalization are affecting missions and what that means for me. How can I get involved in missions, even still here in Winston or in the Triad area? And so little things like that we've kind of worked on to help just kind of, instead of it requiring you to get on a plane and going to India, that you can have access and knowledge to those things here.
Love it.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's good. I would encourage anyone listening to this podcast to keep an eye out and an ear out for all that is coming in 2025, because we are planning to send to over 12 different countries, and that's just what we have currently planned.
Yeah.
We're going to have different trips coming up. They're all going to be on our missions website, Two
Okay.
Cities Church. Just Google missions, Two Cities Church. It'll come up. And we've got some exciting things that are coming.
Tell us, I know we can't go into great detail. Tell us just a little bit about Send Weekend.
Yes, so one of the things that we want to do is we want every single member of our church to be asking this question: what is my role
Yes.
in fulfilling the Great Commission? We want everyone to be on mission wherever they live, learn, work, and play. But we think that there are many people in our church who may be bored at their job, who the Lord has been tugging towards world missions. But for whatever reason, they've been saying no. And we want to do whatever we can to walk alongside those people, encourage them to take their next step, and eventually launch them forward to engaging in the Great Commission long-term overseas. And so Send Weekend is going to be coming up in January. I'm sure we'll be rolling it out in the months to come. And it's going to be a weekend that is going to revolve around the Great Commission. It's going to revolve around global lostness. It's going to revolve around world missions. And so we really want to just put it in front of people, ask them to prayerfully consider what their role is in the Great Commission. It's going to be a great time.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, talking about global missions. We're going to have you back. Because seriously, this is such a massive topic with so many things to say. In the meantime, I want to let you guys know, if you're watching, Let the Nations Be Glad by John Piper.
That's good.
Years ago, I went and visited 6 different missionaries in China. I asked them all what was the biggest influence in them becoming a missionary, and they all said the same thing, Let the Nations Be Glad. So check that out. You can get that anywhere books are sold, and look for our Send Weekend. It's going to be coming up in, I believe, January of 2025 with much more to come. Thank you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.